Welcome to the regular third Friday meeting of the San Jose branch of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. We are here tonight celebrating 110 years of WILPF. Goes back a long ways, not San Jose, but WILPF goes back a long way. We open our meetings with our songs, with the Raging Grannies. The first song, There Are Women in Our Town. There are women in our town, who are bravely breaking ground. They are showing us how to be equal, strong, and free. Granny would be proud of you and me, you and me. Fare thee well, for when we leave thee, just remember we still need thee, and remember that we all must play our part, our part. Long ago our grannies joined the fight to earn for us some equal rights, like voting and almost equal pay. Thanks to them, we're better off today. Fare thee well, for we leave thee. Just remember we still need thee, and remember that we all must play our part, our part. Now the issues are so clear, We need to fight them far and near, when patriarchy and prejudice are gone. There'll still be issues to work on, There'll still be issues to work on, And this one, I think Shirley's going to lead us. Are you, Shirley? Unmute yourself.
All right, let's everybody join in. We are mighty women everywhere, both far and wide. We must now come together like a giant ocean tide. No more fighting, no more strife upon this wondrous planet Earth. We want to live in peace. No more wars upon this planet. No more wars within this space. We must learn to live together, one family, one human race. We don't want our children to be taught to fight and harm. We will work incessantly to cause all nations to disarm. War has never been the answer, it only brought us harm. We want to live in peace. No more wars upon this planet. No more wars within this space. We must learn to live together, one family, one human race.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you. It's time to get to the heart of this meeting, which is a big celebration, commemoration, and examination of what's WILPF US. And to lead us in that, please welcome Rowan Fairgrove. Rowan, it's yours.
Tonight, we're going to talk about the history of the Women's Peace Party and its daughter, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. This presentation has slides from a 2015 deck from WILPF US with edits and additions by Rowan in 2019, 2023, and 2025. Our feminist peace activism began with a commitment to dismantling the systems that make violence possible. Militarism, patriarchy, racism, and capitalism. That work continues. This isn't nostalgia. It's a call to keep organizing, learning, and resisting together. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom has been working continuously since our founding in 1915, or 1919, depending on how you reckon it, to link the issues of war, conflict, and violence to women's rights and economic justice. They are all connected. First, we'll cover some early history, then the road to The Hague, then the women who made that happen and the consequences both personally and to peace efforts. After the early history, we'll share more about WILPF US and our issue committees around the United States who have contributed to WILPF's work for peace. And we'll share about our local branches and invite everyone to join our work. When the war began in 1914, people all over the world marched in protest. In August 29th, 1914, the New York City women marched in a silent funeral women's peace parade, organized by Fanny Garrison Villiard, Carrie Chapman Catt, Jane Addams, and others. About 1,500 white women marched, and behind them were 250 African American women in solidarity, followed by, quote, a number of Indian and Chinese women, end quote, and carloads of elderly women and babies. Harriet Stanton Blatch, daughter of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, said of the parade, "This is a movement for actual work. We intend to do something definite. We wish to have a meeting at the Hague Peace Conference that has been called, and thus began the road to The Hague." Though they were not even allowed the right to vote, following the march, women planned to expand their anti-war advocacy with the creation of a permanent women's peace group, believing that women were more nurturing of human life than men. In January 1915, a national conference of women's organizations called together by Jane Addams and Cherry Chapman Catt, the Women's Peace Party, was founded. They held the belief that women, the mother half of humanity, could no longer tolerate the destruction engendered by war. As Catt said later at The Hague, we must teach our sons that it is greater to live nobly for one's country than to die for it, that love must supplant hate and trust replace suspicion. The official founding date for WILPF is April 1915, based on the date of the meetings at The Hague rather than the 1919 date when WILPF was created, or January 1915 when the Women's Peace Party was founded. That's all kind of a mystery to me, how they chose which date. Jane Addams later became internationally respected for the peace activism that ultimately won her a Nobel Peace Prize in 1931, the first American woman to receive this honor. And yet FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover called her the most dangerous woman in America. Addams and other Hull House residents sponsored legislation to abolish child labor, establish juvenile courts, limit the hours of working women, recognize labor unions, make school attendance compulsory, and ensure safe working conditions in factories. Addams was a vice president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, and she was a founding member of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Thus, a U.S. delegation attended the International Congress of Women at The Hague, Netherlands, in April 1915. The International Congress of Women have gathered together women from around the world to discuss and advance issues related to women's rights and their social, economic, and political empowerment. Prior to the outbreak of World War I, in 1914, women's congresses were held in Paris in 1878, London, 1899, Berlin, 1904, Amsterdam, 1908, Toronto, 1909, and Stockholm, 1911. The 1915 Congress is often referred to as the Women's Peace Congress. The Hague meeting was the result of an invitation by a Dutch women's suffrage organization led by Alida Jacobs to women's rights activists around the world on the basis of the belief that a peaceful international assemblage of women would have its moral effect on the belligerent countries, as Jacobs put it during her opening address to the conference on April 28, 1915. Alida Jacobs wrote in Jus Suffragi, in December 1914, in these dreadful times in which so much hate has been spread among different nations, the women have to show that we at least retain our solidarity and that we are able to maintain mutual friendship. 1,136 peace-seeking women from 12 countries gathered as voting members, although daily attendance at the Congress was often over 2,000. Each session was chaired by a different woman, and many stirring speeches were given. The primary U.S. sponsor of the International Congress of Women was the International Women's Suffrage Alliance, headed by Carrie Chapman Catt, who later founded the League of Women Voters. Jane Addams represented the Women's Peace Party Executive Committee and was invited to preside over the Congress. The four-day conference ended with the formation of an International Women's Committee for Permanent Peace, with Jane Addams as its president, which then dispatched women envoys to the heads of state in 14 countries, advocating a peace commission of neutral states. Most of the 49 or 50 delegates from the U.S. were Women's Peace Party members, but others represented groups such as the Immigrants Protective League, the Universal Peace Union, the National Women's Suffrage Association, and the Women's Trade Union League. Of local interest, Rose Morgan French of San Francisco, California, represented the National Federal Suffrage Association and the California Suffrage Association. Some of the U.S. delegates went as individuals, and this is a list of 45 of the 50 women in the U.S. delegation to The Hague, and it's kind of cool to see this picture of our foremothers who made the big journey. The Congress elected an international team of 5 envoys who traveled back and forth across war-torn Europe and to the USA during the summer months of 1915, visiting 14 belligerent and neutral countries and meeting with 24 influential leaders, prime ministers, foreign ministers, presidents, the King of Norway, and the Pope. In October, a manifesto directed to the governments of Europe and the President of the United States was published, explaining the mission of the envoys was to place before belligerent and neutral alike a proposal for a conference of neutral nations as an agency of continuous mediation for the settlement of war. In October 1915, this manifesto, created by Alida Jacobs of the Netherlands, Crystal Macmillan of Great Britain, Rosika Schwimmer of Austria-Hungary, Emily G. Balch of the United States, and Jane Addams of the United States, it was issued by the International Congress of Women and proposed a permanent peace settlement based on principles of justice, democracy, and international cooperation. It offered guidelines for diplomatic negotiations among hostile nations and endorsed political equality for women in all nations. The manifesto went on to influence the International Declaration of Human Rights, the League of Nations, later the UN, and the Kellogg-Briand Peace Act. At the Zurich Peace Conference hosted by the International Committee of Women for Permanent Peace from 17 to 19 May 1919, delegates vilified the Versailles Treaty for both its punitive measures and its lack of provisions to condemn violence. They also expressed disdain for the exclusion of women from civil and political participation. They approved the League of Nations with stipulations that it be more democratic in principle and that Germany be included. The delegates also formed the new Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILPF, whose constitution pledged to support movements to further peace, internationalism, and the freedom of women. The U.S. branch of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which has its roots in the Women's Peace Party, is the longest-lasting women's peace organization in the United States. A centenary conference was held in Zurich in May of 2019 to reenact and celebrate the Zurich Conference. At the time, speaking out against the war was considered radical and unpatriotic, and some members of the Women's Peace Party paid a high price for their sentiments. The economist and Quaker Emily Green Balch lost her professorship at Wellesley College, and Adam was declared, as I mentioned, the most dangerous woman in America. Eventually, though, the pacifist work of Adams and Balch was recognized. Both won Nobel Peace Prizes in 1931 and 1946, respectively. Professor Balch received no congratulations from the U.S. government, which had long regarded her as a dangerous radical. More recently, in 2017, the Peace Prize was awarded to the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, a coalition of which WILPF is a member. And that ends my section.
So we marched with Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King was a member of WILPF. As was activist Jane Fonda, actress Joanne Woodward, and an array of amazing women authors, including Alice Walker, Ursula K. Le Guin, and feminist teachers, researchers, and authors on sexism and the war system, Betty Reardon and Cynthia Enlow. WILPF has sections and branches around the world working on important issues such as advocacy for disarmament, reduction of military spending and demilitarization, the end of male supremacy, radical change in the way we live, gender, and the fulfillment of women's rights and human rights, creating social systems with no privilege to people or peoples of a given physical type, culture, or religion, and helping create economic systems that will deliver well-being to every human being and other life forms on this precious planet. WILPF, the UN Vision Statement. WILPF envisions a transformed world of peace where there is racial, social, and economic justice for all people everywhere, a world in which the needs of all peoples are met in a fair and equitable manner. All people equally participate in making the decisions that affect them, and the interconnectedness web of life is acknowledged and celebrated in diverse ways and communities. Human societies are designed and organized for sustainable subsistence. Every 3 years, Congress brings together members from all over the world to see the policies and direction of our organization, connect and discuss political issues, and to share knowledge or best practices through workshops, networking events, and discussion spaces. The International Congress is WILPF's highest decision-making body. It is responsible for approving WILPF's international program, admitting new sections, voting for the new international board, and deciding on amendments to WILPF's constitution and bylaws. Congress is also an opportunity for WILPF members to engage with one another across geographic boundaries. This will be WILPF's first ever online Congress, and it will be hosted by WILPF Australia under the theme Making Connections, Environment, Social Justice, and Demilitarization for Feminist Peace. will find a good description of the priorities of WILPF by downloading our 2015, our updated manifesto revised in 2015 at WILPF's 100th anniversary. A copy can be downloaded from the WILPF US site under Resources. Next, we'll talk about issue committees and how to get involved. The people of WILPF are working toward a common hope for peace and international connections and national reach.
It's interesting that U.S. response to the Cuban Revolution in '59 that overthrew the dictatorship of Batista, the U.S. imposed an informational, cultural, economic, commercial, and financial blockade for 6 decades. This seems ironic to me as a way of hailing the overthrow of a dictatorship. But this is part of our history that we have to find ways to overthrow it. Since 1992, the UN General Assembly has passed a resolution every year condemning the ongoing impact of this blockade, declaring it's in violation of the Charter of the United Nations and of international law. From April 2018 to March 2019, the impact of the U.S. embargo on Cubans' foreign trade amounts to more than $4 billion. U.S. efforts to overthrow the Cuban government have also included direct invasion at the Playa Girón, that is, the Bay of Pigs, bombings, biological warfare, and other acts of terrorism meant to force regime change. I think this is something that we've got to look at again and wonder, what are we saying to the world? That we have the right to dictate foreign policy of all the countries in the world? I'm not sure that, well, I am sure that we don't have all the answers and that we need to work together with other countries, with other women's organizations in other countries. WILPF US has been sending delegations of women to Cuba to build ties with the Federation of Cuban Women and other Cuban women's initiatives. We are inspired by the advancements of the Cuban women's movement and the role they play in creating a participatory democracy in Cuba and its intersection with achieving gender justice. I think this is an important issue to think about because there are many ways to try to achieve gender justice, but we have the opportunity of looking at them and seeing which ones are really effective and which ones we want to emulate. Cuba has a long history of actively implementing an internationalist perspective on healthcare by sending healthcare teams internationally, providing medications and training doctors from all over the world. In this global pandemic, we call on the U.S. government to put aside political and ideological differences to fight COVID-19. This is an opportunity just waiting for us to join it.
Thank you, Barbie. That was very
very insightful and encouraging to all of us. What I'm going to do now is to go through the remaining issue committees of National U.S. WILPF US. And the first one, as you can see, is Advancing Human Rights. The listing there gives you the information, except that it is, as it says there, 2021 to 2022 information, and it does not include the newest of the subcommittees that have been added to the Advancing Human Rights, or AHR, as we refer to it sometimes. The newest subcommittee is Housing. That was the most recently formed one of the subcommittees of Advancing Human Rights. And the subcommittees of the WILPF US Advancing Human Rights Issues Committee work to enhance respect and actions for human rights at the federal, state, and local levels, working with other organizations. WILPF US members are welcome to join AHR and any of its subcommittees. And the way to do that is to write to AHR, as it says up here at the top of the slide, AHR chair at wilpfus.org. Actually, Teresa Elamine was the chair of AHR for quite a while, as have been a couple other people over the years. And but now she was able to recruit 2 new co-chairs. And I'm not going to try to give you their names, but if you write to AHR chair at wilpfus.org, you will be welcomed and given information about when meetings of the various subcommittees are. I hope that we will hear from you, because that Advancing Human Rights is one of the issue committees that I'm a member of. I'm also a member of the Disarm End Wars Committee, which you can see the information about on the screen now. The goals are listed there for the committee, and you can read those from the listing. There are more to read there than there was for AHR. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and then I've got some information to add to what is on the screen. The committee work is driven by the growing threat that nuclear weapons pose to human survival, the environment, socioeconomic development, the global economy, food security, and the health and welfare of current and future generations. Now, nuclear weapons are extremely, as you know, threatening, and would be horrible to have any more use beyond what happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II. The problem is getting rid of them. There are so many, and there's such a potential for accidental use. Getting support for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which is referred to as T for Treaty, P for Prohibition, TPNW. Getting support by circulating petitions to the House of Representatives and the US Senate, writing to our congressional representatives and senators, working on getting resolutions from cities in support of the TPNW. It's very important. And again, if you have an interest in this, there are the 3 to join this committee. You can see the names of the 3 co-chairs up at the top of the slide. Make a note of those: Cheryl Spencer, Diane Blay, Ellen Thomas. But you can write to them at disarmchair@wilpfus.org. Another effort is to reduce the U.S. military budget. The committee is partners in Cut the Pentagon. That's capital C, capital P, Cut the Pentagon, a resourceful website led by Code Pink. So you can find that website for the information for Cut the Pentagon at the website, at the Code Pink website. Another coalition we work with is People Over Pentagon. And another tactic we are advocating for is divesting from the military industrial complex, of course, as do many other groups. But so far, there's a lot of work left to do. As we deal with radioactive waste and contaminated lands created by the decades of producing nuclear weapons, we are members of the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability, which was founded by a coalition of organizations. Another effort is advocating for ceasefires in ongoing wars, such as the wars between Israel and Palestine and Gaza, and between Ukraine and Russia. We attend the Peace in Ukraine peace summits, members of the committee, in person and via live stream, such as the Vienna Peace Summit in June of 2023, which members attended. Continuing with information about the Disarm End Wars Committee, I just want to say that the committee meetings are very long because there's so much that the committee is working with and the subcommittees are working on. The meetings are twice a month, so write to the Disarm chair at wilpfus.org to get on the list to receive the notices and links for those meetings. Another effort is to collaborate with WILPF sections in Africa to work against AFRICOM and to spread awareness here and abroad about the International Congress on Pan-Africanism. Another important concern is ending lethal autonomous weapons systems, or LAWS, lethal autonomous weapons systems, and weaponized drones. This campaign educates the public and legislators about the use of artificial intelligence in military weapons and the need to follow international law. Another focus is promoting peace via treaties. This campaign draws attention to the arms control treaties that have recently been abandoned by the US and Russia, and educates the public about the urgent need to renegotiate treaties that concern nuclear weapons and their testing. And the last piece of information about the Disarm End Wars Committee that I want to share with you is about working to get institutions and individuals to divest from weapons industries. For example, we collaborate with the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which is ICAN, which you probably have heard of, ICAN, just one N and no W on the end of it, but it's the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICAN. The work is to develop strategies to press for divestment in pension plan portfolios, such as Don't Bank on the Bomb. And ICAN also had a major campaign in the past few years. So please write to the Disarm chair at wilpfus.org to get more information about ICAN, as well as looking for them on the internet. This Domestic Prisoners of War has a name of the committee that may not quite make it completely clear what this committee is about. This committee is about the pervasive effects of domestic violence and the misguided public policies which blame rather than offer healing, offer healing and social reintegration to survivors, as you can see on the screen. At present, members, DPOW, we call it, DPOW, are examining the societal and economic costs of domestic violence to society as well as to individuals. We are collaborating with other organizations in order to recommend research-based changes to federal and state laws regarding the impacts of domestic violence. The goal is to work with WILPF branches on the state levels. Every year in October, DPOW presents a conference designed to educate, inform, and recruit allies towards its mission. At present, members are continuing research in their chosen areas of interest for presentation next fall. DPOW members choose demographics of society as an area of personal or professional interest. If a chosen area of interest is already being explored by someone or others, we invite those who would like to join the work to join up with the members who are exploring your chosen topic area. If a chosen area of interest is not being explored, we welcome your initiation in this work and will work as a committee to see that you are supported in this area. And I would say also that probably all of us, unfortunately, know people who have been affected by domestic violence or are currently being affected by domestic violence. So I hope that you will see if they would be interested in joining this committee. The next committee is Earth Democracy. You can see, I think you can read where it says Peace and Planet at the bottom, before profit. At this time, we're broadening the range. That committee is broadening the range of their work. Although since 2020, they've been focused on the dangerous PFAS. That's P as in Paul, F as in Frank, A, S as in Sam. There are that is a group of chemicals called forever chemicals. PFAS work has relied on several key ongoing leaders. Marguerite Edelman is the coordinator of the Vermont PFAS Military Poisons Coalition, which is a project of WILPF US. Investigator, reporter, and researcher Pat Elder publishes articles based on his leadership on the committees and his militarypoisons.org project website. So you can look for militarypoisons.org to learn more about this committee and what Pat Elder's elements or aspects of it. Also, Patricia Hines, who's a Taprock Peace and Justice Center board member in Deerfield, Massachusetts, has contributed important articles, books, and works on peace education and women's health. Going forward, Earth Democracy will be clustering the work under 3 campaigns: human right to water and health, global warming and renewable energy, and food sovereignty and local economy. The committee will be creating special projects for immediate and or more intense focus. Listing the ways to contact these committees are all at the top of the sections that you're seeing on the screen. The next committee is Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee, or perhaps one might say MEPJAC. Among the goals that you see listed there are quite a few. And for some history of this committee, Libby Frank founded the WILPF US section's Middle East Committee in the early 1970s, the period during which WILPF International declared support for a Palestinian state alongside Israel, for a peace conference under UN auspices, and the creation of weapons of mass destruction free zone in the area, which is still a goal and is reported on regularly at the meetings of the WILPF Committee. In 1975, Libby Frank and Edith Valentine, who was the WILPF International Secretary General at that time, led a mission to Palestine, Israel, and Lebanon, to understand the problems that Arab and Israeli women face and to gain better knowledge of their status in society, their activities, and their aspirations. Some Israeli women are very active and concerned about the situation between Israel and the Palestinians. The WILPF Committee envisions a Middle East in which all people have equitable access to resources, have equal human rights and fundamental freedoms, with adherence to international law without exceptions, the right of civil liberty to organize nonviolently for freedom and justice is important also, along with equal standing of all stakeholders at negotiations. Participation of women in the peaceful resolution of all conflicts, and the obligation to investigate and make reparations for personal harm caused by state violence. The last of the issue committees of WILPF US is the Women, Money, and Democracy Committee. And again, you can see up above to make a note. And also you can get these connections and lots of this information on the WILPFus.org website. Operating since the 1990s, the Women, Money, and Democracy, or $D, issue committee educates and activates on issues of unchecked corporate power and big money. You will find an activities list in the WSD section of the website. Among those are to educate and raise awareness about the threat to democracy from runaway inequality, economic injustice, and the consolidation of money and power in the top 1% of our country, which we're seeing a lot of efforts towards that to make it even worse now. Also, the activities of this group are to raise practical solutions that can protect a vibrant democracy and ensure that the voice and values of the people guide our government. That's, again, very important. Our US solutions must be determined without the influence of huge US donors and dark money from foreign countries. Also, the committee wants to create an awareness among women about our role in our rigged economy, and to lift up feminist solutions for system change from the bottom up and work to put pressure on our federal representatives in the Congress and in the executive branch of the government. Lastly, they are focused on prioritizing leadership and training among WILPF members through a feminist model of democratic leadership. The work of the committee towards systems change is informal but serious. So again, if you have made notes of the committees you're particularly interested in, great. And you can go to the wilpfus.org website and get the addresses for the contact people for these issue committees. And I hope you will do that. The meetings are usually once a month, except as I said, the disarm committee meets twice a month, usually the second and last weeks of the month. So I hope I'll see some of you at these Zoom meetings for these committees. I don't attend all of them, but you don't need to either, but we can pick out some that we're particularly interested in and then we'll bring more information back to our WILPF San Jose group as we find things that are coming up that people would likely be interested in learning about. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. So we talked a little bit about the historic women of WILPF, and we're going to talk about just a couple of the women of WILPF today, because it's clear every day that we cannot work in silos. WILPF supports a variety of women activists who are our allies. We donate, share petitions, issue joint national statements, attend conferences together, promote each other's projects and actions, and work to build a movement of movements, because it's going to take all of us. Women like Charmaine Whiteface of South Dakota, a WILPF member who leads the Defenders of the Black Hills. She educates and protests for cleaning up toxic uranium mines on sacred native lands. WILPF member Medea Benjamin helped found and is the face of Code Pink, Women for Peace, which is an internationally active NGO that describes itself as, quote, a grassroots peace and social justice movement working to end U.S.-funded wars and occupations and to challenge militarism, support peace and human rights initiatives, and redirect our tax dollars into healthcare, education, green jobs, and other life-affirming programs, end quote. Lucy Lewis from our Triangle branch in North Carolina has organized WILPF responses to the horrific cuts to human services and budgets and collaborates with Moral Monday movement and risks arrest each week at the state capitol in North Carolina. Moral Mondays has relaunched the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival across the country to challenge the evils of systemic racism, poverty, the war economy, ecological devastation, and the nation's distorted morality. WILPF is a partner of the Poor People's Campaign as well, and many branches have had and supported the Poor People's Campaign. Our coalition partner, the International Campaign Against Nuclear Weapons, was awarded the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize. That same year, WILPF New York had a Women Ban the Bomb march with supportive sister marches at branches around the country to raise awareness about nuclear weapons, the nuclear weapons ban treaty at the United Nations that over 120 nations have signed. Not the U.S., of course. After Moral Mondays, WILPF partnered with the emerging Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. WILPF branches and members participated in the 2018 40 Days of Moral Action in state houses across the U.S. Our branch participated with trips to Sacramento and advertising the Currents Week theme at local libraries. WILPF had a presence at the Poor People's Moral Action Congress in Washington, D.C. in 2019, and there were many WILPFers there from around the country. Our branch participated in the San Francisco More Tour, that's mobilizing, organizing, registering, and educating tour, in December of 2019, the last pre-COVID in-person stop on that tour. Enough WILPF women signed up that we had our own pew at Glide Memorial for the event. In 2022, WILPF stepped up and created a WILPF for PPC committee headed by Emily Keel and Rowan Fairgrove that did many things to drive turnout for the June 22 March on Washington. Our president, Darian DeLue, spoke 2022 at the California PPC International Women's Day event, And Rowan is still involved in the National Prophetic Council, a gathering of faith leaders, and is part of the California Poor People's Campaign's social media team. I'm also the chair of the WILPF for PPC group, which we have an e-list. And if you're interested in hearing about WILPF for PPC things, there hasn't been a lot lately because the PPC has been very focused on doing things in Washington, which is kind of hard for us in California to join in, although I've gone to most of the live streams. So WILPF has consultative status, Category B, with the United Nations through the Economic and Social Council since 1948. After 100 years, WILPF continues to campaign for total and universal disarmament. During its lifetime, WILPF has organized dialogues between women in the Middle East, sent delegations to women in North and South Vietnam to oppose the Vietnam War, and worked closely with the UN to enact change for women's peace and security. WILPF supports United Nations treaties regarding weapons of mass destruction based on humanitarian grounds. TPNW sparked many conversations, letter writing campaigns, and marches among our branches. January 22nd, 2022, WILPF branches around the country celebrated the first anniversary. This photo is from the Peninsula Palo Alto branch, and there are also, I think, some members of our branch there. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton introduced her Warheads to Windmills bill for the 17th time on March 5th of this year. She wrote, "Today I introduce the Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Conversion Act of 2025. This bill would require the United States, beginning on the date that the President certifies Congress that all countries possessing nuclear weapons have begun the verifiable and irreversible elimination of such weapons under the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, to redirect resources that are being used for nuclear weapons programs to be used for addressing the climate crisis and human and infrastructure needs such as housing, health care, and restoring the environment." In 1993, District of Columbia peace activists were successful in getting a ballot initiative in D.C. passed that called for nuclear disarmament. Since then, I, Congresswoman Norton, have introduced the bill each Congress based on that initiative, including this bill. In March 2019, the D.C. Council passed a Sense of the Council resolution urging the United States to approve the treaty. These actions show that D.C. residents were early, prescient leaders on this important issue. It seems that the rest of the world is thankfully starting to catch up to D.C. As the only nation that has used nuclear weapons in war and that still possesses one of the largest nuclear weapons arsenals, this bill would help the United States reestablish its moral leadership in the world. I urge my colleagues to support this bill. And as you can see, there's a link on this slide if you want to screenshot it. There's information on how to urge your congresspeople to support Congresswoman Norton's bill, because this is right up the alley of the things that WILPF does. I'm turning it over to our membership officer, Paula.
Yes. There are lots of branches, so let's talk about branches. WILPF San Jose was founded in 1951. Active in local and national politics, members of the San Jose branch champion world peace, disarmament, women's rights, and economic and racial equality. Our monthly meeting is the third Friday right here on Zoom. Our raging grannies, yes, there are many of us here, attended many local rallies before COVID, and we are now getting back into the streets, so join us. WILPF Peninsula Branch, Peninsula Palo Alto Branch, founded in 1922 by Josephine Duveneck and Alice Park. Duveneck and her husband provided shelter at their Hidden Villa Ranch for Japanese Americans during the internments World War II. Park was a Palo Alto journalist and suffragist whose papers are housed at Stanford's Hoover Institute. The Palo Alto Peninsula branch boasts more than 100 members on its mailing list, but most recent meetings consist of a core group of about 20 women and men. The branch meets monthly to discuss ongoing goals, projects, and current issues such as shelter initiative for local homeless populations, the refugee crisis, and affordable housing, as well as the ever-present problems of violence and war around the world. The Santa Cruz branch was founded in 1961 and now has over 250 peace and freedom-loving members, women and men. They are one of the largest, most active branches in U.S. WILPF. Members went to the Hull House celebration in Chicago and to the 100-year reenactment of the Women's Congress at The Hague. They focus on educating themselves and others to change the root causes of war, violence, environmental degradation, and injustice. WILPF branches were founded in San Francisco in 1923 and the East Bay in 1940. They share a website and Facebook page. And we couldn't find meeting information, but there are email addresses on the website to follow up if you're interested in these branches. WILPF Fresno has a very active Facebook presence, and you can find that at WILPF. You can contact them at wilpf.fresno@gmail.com. The Jane Addams branch. The Jane Addams virtual branch holds meetings on the third Wednesday of each month. All WILPF US members are welcome to attend our monthly meetings and share news or questions. Watch for e-alerts the week before each meeting with the link to register. Remember, the Jane Addams branch is here for all members, especially those without access to a local branch. Cluster meetings. Regional cluster meetings were held periodically before the pandemic, and we hope they'll start up again soon. The Western Cluster has met in Sacramento. At the 2018 meeting on September 29th, about 30 WILPF members from around the state gathered to meet and share ideas. The meeting included a presentation by Ricky Gard Diamond, author of Screwnomics, How Our Economy Works Against Women and Real Ways to Make Lasting Change, a related presentation on public banking, and report back from the International WILPF Congress in Ghana by Darian DeLu, who became president of WILPF, and Barbara Nielsen. This has been a lot of information to take in quickly. We'll be happy to answer questions if you have any, but we would also like to know a little bit about you after hearing all of this information. You know we're stronger together, especially when we know who we are and what inspires us. In a minute, we'll go around the screen and I'll ask you to tell me, what inspired you? Let's finish this presentation first. This slide and the next slide give a bit of information on joining WILPF. Your local membership person, that would be yours truly, Paula Rochelle. I'm happy to speak to you about becoming a member or sustaining your membership. We hope you will consider joining us and staying with us. WILPF remains the world's largest women's organization for peace. We welcome and encourage younger women to join us. We want to help empower tomorrow's activist leaders. COVID has brought our branch numbers low, and recruiting at events has not been possible. WILPF US has recruiting suggestions, including, how about this, a Solidarity event at a public place where women get together for tea and pastries and to hear about WILPF. That doesn't seem currently very practical, but when we decide how to start recruiting, there are resources. When you join WILPF, you automatically join WILPF US International, $35 a year. And these are the programs. That brings us to the end of our program. I want to thank everyone for listening, for being here, for being attentive. And now let's go around. Of all the things presented, what inspires you? What of the things here were you inspired by? Where shall we start? Barbie, what inspires you of all the things we've talked about?
The ability to reach out to people who aren't in the peace movement yet, but because we have done specific things, we can use this to help others join us.
Right. Wonderful. How about others? What inspires you? We've talked about a lot of things. Any of those issues committee, any of those women uninspired. Medea Benjamin just inspires me. She's something else. She is our current, for me, a current hero. How about others? What inspired you? We have a couple of minutes.
Karen has unmuted and others need to unmute.
Yeah, I was thinking that the fighting for democracy committee and money and whatever, women and whatever, is very important right now because we have to fight for our democracy.
All right. Yeah, Essie, you unmuted?
Yeah. Okay. I started in 2003 when the Iraq War happened. Attack to the Iraq War was started, and I joined Code Pink, and I dressed pink and went to a Raging Granny meeting. I thought it's a Code Pink meeting. Then it turned out to be a Raging Granny, and then onwards I joined WILPF, and I'm very honored to be in all these three organizations. Thank you.
Happy to have you be one of our core people. All right. How about others? What was inspiring tonight? There was a lot of information. What inspired you?
Well, I've done versions of this presentation, and this is the first time the issue committees have been covered. And I just really want to thank Joan and Barbie for sharing information about the issue committees closest to their hearts. I think that's a really important thing. I don't know that I have the bandwidth to join any of them, but I'm really glad to know more about what WILPF is doing via the issue committees. And I love learning more about Fresno branch. Those people are doing so much. Just, it's amazing. And so, they've been doing solidarity teas, and they put a peace poll at one of their local sites of things. I don't know if you know about the World Peace Polls. They have May Peace Prevail on Earth in different languages, and you can get ones that are square, so you have 4 languages, or ones that are hexagonal, and you've got 6, or octagonal, you've got 8 languages that are all saying May Peace Prevail on Earth. And there's one on the San Jose state campus and various other places around our town. But I just love that WILPF Fresno has planted one in their region. So that was inspiring to me. And they're doing something for Earth Day at the Earth Day Fair, and they meet every month, and they have all these programs. I've been following their Facebook page for a while, and I have to say they do good programs.
How about others? What was inspiring? Poor People's Campaign, anyone? We've been singing Poor People's Campaign songs in Raging Grannies. Anyone else? What is inspiring?
Well, it's all your fault. Poor People's Campaign took over my life for some years in there.
As well. When Rowan says, San Jose branch had a presence. She means I went to Washington, D.C. I went to the state. She went to the state capitol. She went to Washington, D.C. Poor People's Campaign, and it's a very inspiring program. Well, if no one else has anything that inspired them,
Shirley.
Oh, Shirley, yes, Shirley.
I'll make it brief since we only have a few minutes, but I'm inspired by our current women leaders in San Jose. I think Rowan and Paula, you've been made such a difference to our little group. We had some wonderful leaders before and wonderful members. I go all the way back to Dorothy Aspinwall, who was our membership chairperson, and I think her husband Richie was the treasurer, and they were for a long time. But you can't, once our members have passed on, you just need to keep other people who have a commitment to the wider issues of peace and justice for everyone. And women always have had the short end of the stick, and WILPF is a wonderful organization to be part of a movement that helps women as well as others to gain some foothold in our nation. So thank you, ladies.
And Shirley, you're a key part of that. We're really pleased to have you and have your long history with WILPF carrying us forward. And I appreciate that. Others, what inspires you about what we have just seen or what you know about WILPF?
Okay. I'm very inspired with WILPF, and every time I hear about their background, wow, they're doing big movements and causes. They're taking up a lot for such a small organization, but it's not that small. And it's got in a United Nation. They have a chair there that I enjoy watching. And I brag about it here in San Diego to everyone. I'm a member of WILPF, I'm a member of Raging Grannies, and I'm known here as Grandma Essie. Here she comes and she's going to sing for us. And I'm really trying to get a group together here. But it's inspiring. I'm very proud to be a member.
Right. Well, if you're not currently a member, you can expect to hear from me. I am the membership chair, and I have a list, and I'm checking it twice. And I will be reaching out to you to renew your membership or your support or to join for the first time, in case some of you haven't joined for the first time. But I would like to end the formal part of our program with a big applause to Rowan for putting this together. You know how to do applause on Zoom. We've had 5 years of this, folks. We know how to do it. Yes, it's been 5 years. So big applause. This is a wonderful program, Rowan. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's inspiring to be able to talk about WILPF and the history that we have and the people doing amazing work all over the country and the world. They're, international WILPF is a thing, even if they do like to have meetings at like 3 a.m. our time.
If not, then it's time to close our meeting. And may I just say that Rowan is not only a wonderful tech maven, but Rowan wrote the song, one of the songs we're going to sing right now. You know how that goes. Everybody mutes.
When we see a problem, we show up. When we see injustice, we show up. When we see someone in pain, we show up with friends and train. When we see injustice, we show up. When we see a neighbor needing help, then it's time to show up for them too. We're all interconnected and your pain hurts me too. When we see injustice, we show up. When it's time to head out to the march, the grannies will always be there too. With our hats and protest songs, you can count that we belong. When we see injustice, we show up.
And with that, it brings to close this April meeting of the San Jose branch of WILPF US. Thank you all for coming, and thank you again to all those who participated, to Rowan, to Shirley, to Joan, to Barbie for doing the readings.
And look for other events celebrating the 110th anniversary, both at the, I just got an email, I think, from Mary Beth Gardam today about something upcoming from WILPF US. I got something from WILPF International, which, like I said, was at 3 in the morning our time, and so I probably won't be going to that one. But this is our 110th anniversary month, and there will be activities. That's a threat.
Watch for one from WILPF US. There is a gathering on Monday, April 28th. It's at 5 p.m. Pacific time. The link opens at 4:45, so you can arrive early, get tech connected, and be ready for the 5 p.m. start. That's a decent hour.